especially if all the rumours do end up coming true, and this does end up being a new dawn for the football club. We will look back on this as a momentous sort of moment in terms of Tranmere's history. Really, takeover might still have happened if we had gone down, but I reckon it probably would have been watered down a fair bit. There's lack of the FL funding and all sorts of stuff you have to consider when you go down there. So forever thankful. Fantastic achievement for sure. The area where I live, sort of Port Vale, and all the Port Vale fans, in terms of the man that Crosby is, speak extremely highly of him. My brother-in-law's a Port Vale season ticket holder, and he loves Crosby. He essentially said, which I wasn't aware of really, but he essentially said it was him that pretty much got them promoted when, Darryl Clark had what happened to him, the tragedy that happened to him and his family. And Crosby really, really carried that on. And okay, they struggled the following season in the league higher, and that was blamed on recruitment from their director of football, Flitcroft, and things unravelled. But clearly a man who's a good coach, a very nice man. We all said Adkins was a nice man, but clearly Crosby is. I'm forever grateful to him. I think he's very, very quickly bought into the area as well, and the culture. You see pictures of him in the tent afterwards on Saturday, drinking with the fans, and that's great. And Mickey did that as well. And for a man to do that, he's realised where he is straight away. He wants to tap into the fan culture and things like that. And I think that's great to see. And again, people might say, "Oh, it's just cheap. He's playing to the masses." I don't think he is. I think he's genuine. I think it'll go down as a really, really good achievement, because, as you say, it's not easy to pick up. Where we were on the floor. I mean, contributors to this pod, Matt, from all corners of the country who travel to Swindon on a Tuesday night, we were floored. Even the most optimistic fans, and there's more optimistic fans than me on this pod, were fearing the worst. So I think we're all just relieved and happy, and I think we'll be forever grateful for what he's done. And I think it's a really, really good achievement, and I think it is up there.
One more thing then before we move on. Sadly, you and I have now been following Tranmere for far too long. But there are 5 occasions that I can think of that are reasonably comparable to what we had against Crewe on Saturday. Be it that there have been 4 matches since before then, over the 20 years before then, where Tranmere have had something to fight for that has been big. So I mentioned it earlier, 2005-06, that MK Dons game, the penultimate match of the season, was effectively a playoff to see who stayed up, because those of you who are long in the tooth will also remember that MK Dons, I think, played Rotherham the week after, and those two were both below Tranmere in the table. So if Tranmere lost, it effectively meant they were going to go down against MK Dons. But they won 2-1. There was Stockport in 2009-10, last day of the season, where they win to stay up. And then there's Bradford in 13-14, and to a slightly lesser extent, Plymouth in 14-15, those 2 occasions where Tranmere lose and obviously therefore get relegated. How does the feeling from Saturday's game against Crewe compare for you to the one that the MK Dons win and the Stockport win gave you?
I think I was more relieved on Saturday than the other 2. I would say. I was there at MK Dons. I was there at Stockport as well, thinking the MK Dons one was in that hockey stadium where the stands were getting wheeled in. And I remember being floored because we'd just gone 1-0 up late. I think McAteer free kick, and I think an own goal flicked in. And then Isaiah McLeod, as he normally always did against Tranmere, scored an overhead kick. Normally always scored against Tranmere. And then you're thinking it's going to be a draw. And then right at the end, Facey nicks it. And I remember I was getting thrown around in that stand, something rotten as a youngster back then. So that was just pure delight and happiness. I think that was my rider feeling then. Stockport, I was really confident going into that one, which was unusual for me because I think they were such a mess that year, Stockport. They were an absolute mess. So it felt like we were going to win that game. So I wasn't as nervy that day. It felt like we had the whole stadium as well that day. We had the side and behind the goal, and it just felt like we were going to stay up. The reason I'm more relieved now, I think, is because of the promise of what might be. What might be in terms of what's coming next around the corner for this club. We hear rumours and I hear things all the time, and I've been told things in terms of what the new owners might be planning, and it does sound like they're going to look at a lot of aspects of the club, which is music to my ears because it does need looking at. But I think you alluded to it on Saturday as well, Matt, on the pod after the game, or Sunday, that it might still have happened if we'd gone down, but it might have been a different version. Like you said, there was an A and a B. And it's imperative that we get the A if that's the first choice. Because, okay, look, we're all relieved. And that's my overriding feeling compared to the other two situations you mentioned is pure relief. Because this club, and I've just mentioned it, you know, you've got contributors on this pod who travel a long way, too far, I would say, to watch games. And we haven't had hope for a long time. It feels like it's been years since you looked at Tranmere and you thought they're going to have a right go this year. We've just been aimlessly sailing along and making up the numbers. And I think a season like this, unfortunately, was probably on the cards. I think Mickey Mellon was getting frustrated by the end with, I think, he didn't say it, but I think, with recruitment and things like that. And, we bring Ian Dawes in, which was nonsense, which you all knew at the time. And then he tries to save face by bringing his mate in. Then he gives his mate an obscene deal, which he's never given a manager before. Then he keeps in, and it just feels like we've just been on a downward trajectory for a long time. And now after that, after Saturday, is there hope? I don't know who makes up all. You hear names all the time. We don't know for sure. Is the worry? Yeah, probably a little bit, because it's a step into the unknown. But in my opinion, I know for sure the alternative of keeping the status quo is worse. Because if we're all relieved now, if Palios remained in charge and we go into next season, because I don't think Crosby would stay if Palios stayed. I know Dave mentioned Palios would offer him the job, which he would. I'd be surprised if Crosby took it with what his ambitions are. And this day would come again. What we just said, we'd be down there again, because we've proven now, we've seen enough times with the recruitment currently at the club that it's poor. That we just, and I know Palios said he's going to carry out a review. We carry out a review every year and nothing changes. So I'm tired of hearing that. I'm tired of hearing him on Radio Merseyside in the summer saying how good the summer's going to be and how we've identified problems from the previous year and it's going to be addressed. It isn't. He's told us enough now, and it never is. So I don't believe a word he says in that aspect. So yeah, pure relief with a hint of real cautious optimism and excitement of what's to come, and that's why I think the first two scenarios you mentioned was just sheer joy and happiness. Like, we've stayed up, brilliant. Saturday was just pure relief, because the alternative was a drop into non-league, which is a nightmare to get out of, and potentially what would go wrong with this supposed takeover.